Under the glare of parade lights, Kim Jong Un unveils the Hwasong-20, a new solid-fuel ICBM that could strike the US mainland. With Moscow and Beijing watching from the stands, North Korea declares itself an irreversible nuclear power. As Pyongyang flaunts its might and Washington weighs its next move, the world braces for the dawn of a more dangerous nuclear era. North Korea rolled out the most powerful nuclear strategic weapon, a new intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM, which features advancements in an arsenal capable of striking the US. According to Pyongyang's state media, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un oversaw a display starring his new solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile on October 10th at Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Square on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the ruling Workers' Party. The ICBM was called the Hwasong-20. At a massive military parade featuring the new solid-fuel missile and other weapons, Kim, armed with nuclear weapons and powerful friends, signaled his determination to stand up to Washington.
Our army should continue to grow into an invincible entity that destroys all threats, by dint of its political, ideological, military, and technical superiority, overwhelming the enemy. We should steadily strengthen ourselves into an elite armed forces which win victory after victory on the strength of morality and discipline.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang, the country's #2 official, and Russia's ruling party chief and former president, Dmitry Medvedev, were among the dignitaries who joined Kim at the event, reuniting a loose anti-Western axis of nations. Top officials from Vietnam and Laos also attended the event. North Korea's new nuclear-capable system uses solid fuel rockets rather than older liquid fuel missiles. Solid fuel makes launches more mobile, harder for satellites to detect, and is reportedly capable of firing on much shorter notice. And the Hwasong-20 could, in theory, reach all US territories. Television footage showed a giant missile with a rounded, blunt nose loaded on an 11-axle trailer rolling through Kim Il-sung Square as spectators chanted slogans. Kim watched the parade from a reviewing stand flanked by Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Vietnamese Communist Party chief To Lam, and Russia's former president Dmitry Medvedev. A group of North Korean soldiers who fought in the war marched across the square, chanting slogans such as "absolute loyalty" and waving both North Korean and Russian flags. Speaking at the parade, Kim said North Korea would continue its struggle to oppose injustice and hegemony, in an apparent reference to the United States. However, he refrained from issuing any direct threats against Washington or Seoul. He has previously said the North is open to talks with the US if Washington abandons its demand for denuclearization. North Korea has been accelerating the development of missiles and other weapons under its 5-year defense plan, which concludes at the end of this year. Analysts agreed that Kim's remarks were carefully calibrated to avoid projecting an overly aggressive image or provoking Washington. Korea Defense Network Director Lee Il-woo, speaking to This Week in Asia, said,
"This looks like a totally new ICBM, capable of reaching multiple targets on the eastern part of America in one go."
Du Jinho, a researcher at the Korea Research Institute for National Strategy, told South China Morning Post,
"In sum, Kim is sending a message to Washington that North Korea has become a nuclear-armed state whose status can never be reversed. Kim's speech boils down to 3 points. We will step up efforts to develop both conventional and nuclear weapons. The threats from the United States are intensifying, and we will close ranks with Russia and China."
According to the missile expert, the Hwasong-20 appears heavier, and its larger, rounder nose suggests it could contain multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. This would allow a single missile to carry several warheads, each capable of being guided to separate targets, posing major challenges to US missile defense systems. Cho Han-bum of the Korea Institute for National Unification, however, cautioned against reading too much into the new weapon, noting that Pyongyang had not yet conducted flight tests of its ICBMs, including the existing Hwasong-19.
Since North Korea, while showcasing the Hwasong-15, declared the completion of its nuclear force in 2017, it has never conducted flight tests to prove they are working.
Flight tests to verify re-entry heat resistance were crucial, Cho noted. As North Korea marks the 80th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party, Kim Jong Un appears more entrenched in power than at any time in his rule. The Grand Military Parade in Pyongyang on October 10th, featuring tens of thousands of troops and an extensive display of missiles, is as much a show of military might as it is a declaration of political dominance. Foreign delegations from China and Russia attended the event, underscoring Pyongyang's renewed importance to both powers amid global tensions. The symbolism is striking. Kim has leveraged his nuclear arsenal to transform isolation into strategic leverage. In recent months, Kim has been seen alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, positioning himself within a new axis of autocratic resilience. North Korea's support for Russia's war in Ukraine through arms and ammunition supplies has earned Pyongyang crucial political and economic returns. Moscow, in turn, has reportedly sent shipments of food and fuel to ease North Korea's chronic shortages. Meanwhile, Beijing's enforcement of UN sanctions has quietly softened, further blunting the impact of international pressure. This trilateral alignment has strengthened Kim's ability to defy Western isolation and maintain regime stability. Domestically, Kim's consolidation of power rests on an aggressive nuclear doctrine. The US Defense Intelligence Agency, in a report released in May 2025, assessed that Pyongyang seeks global recognition as a de facto nuclear power. In May, the US Defense Intelligence Agency estimated in its report saying,
North Korea was in its strongest strategic position in decades and posed a potential threat to U.S. forces and their allies in East Asia. Pyongyang is continuing to advance its military capabilities, which could allow it to even threaten the U.S. mainland. Kim is increasingly confident about his international political legitimacy and the security of his regime.
The North's 2006 nuclear debut under Kim Jong-il has evolved under Kim Jong Un into an expansive deterrence policy. A 2022 law authorized the preemptive use of nuclear weapons and declared the country's nuclear status irreversible. 1 year later, that position was enshrined in the Constitution, signaling no intent to denuclearize. Both China and Russia, despite their unease over a nuclear-armed neighbor, have since stopped calling publicly for a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. Kim's next move is aimed at Washington. He has conditioned new dialogue with the United States on what he calls an end to America's absurd obsession with denuclearization. With President Donald Trump expected to visit South Korea for the APEC summit at the end of October, speculation is mounting that the two leaders could meet again at the demilitarized zone, echoing their historic 2019 encounter. From military parades to diplomatic maneuvering, Kim Jong-un's mix of deterrence and diplomacy has paid off, making him not just stronger than ever, but central to Asia's new geopolitical equation.